Welcome to Marketing Made Simple TV. I'm Jeff Ogden, the host of the show, and we're glad to have you back for another wonderful show. And we've got another great guest today. This gentleman is a study of the social sciences, and he wrote a book called The Human Brand, Chris Malone. So let's welcome Chris to the show.
Nice to be with you, Jeff.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here. I just want to start you off with the basic question, and it is, who are you and what do you do?
Well, as you said, my name is Chris Malone. I am an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant, and I'm a poor and infrequent but still enthusiastic surfer when I get the chance. And what I do is I lead a consulting firm here in Philadelphia called Fidel & Partners, and we consult Fortune 500 companies, startups, and nonprofits on how to build stronger customer and employee loyalty.
That's good. And I had a chance to dive into your book a little bit, Chris, and you talk about how humans relate to companies and people, and you talk about warmth and competence. Talk to us about that whole idea of warmth and competence and how it drives so much in society.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, I was fortunate to stumble across some work done by social psychologists, and one in particular, Dr. Susan Fiske at Princeton, talking about just what you mentioned, the warmth and competence model. And it turns out that social psychologists around the world have, in the last few years, been able to show that all humans everywhere use this basic thought process almost subconsciously whenever we're interacting with one another, and that it drives basically 80% of all human behavior in a social context. And to kind of put it in a nutshell for you, if you go back tens of thousands of years in the original game of Survivor, the most important decisions that people made every day had to do with their relationships staying in that tribe. Who can I trust? And what are their abilities? Or more simply, what are others' intentions towards me? What is their warmth towards me? And then what is their competence? What is their ability to carry out those intentions? And so it turns out we're making these judgments every day, all the time, and staying in that tribe is how we, through evolution, we're hardwired to make those decisions. And we do it so quickly, we don't even think about it. And so that is the basic process that we have shown also not only drives our behavior with one another, but it turns out is enormously driving our behavior related to companies, brands, products, and services as well.
That's interesting, and you said it's even subconscious. It's like programmed in our crocodile brain, so to speak, of how we think about it. Now, you have a lot of examples in your book, and I know you brought some charts with you, so give us a little bit of background on kind of some of the research that has gone into this and some of the things you've learned about how businesses actually use warmth and competence.
Sure. So first I'll kind of explain the basic model and how it works and how it guides our behavior. So if you'll bring up slide 1 real quickly, basically the warmth and competence model is showing that there is a predictable pattern of perceptions that we have, and that leads to a predictable pattern of emotions, and that those emotions lead to predictable behaviors. And so if you pull up slide 1, what you'll see, if we think about someone who we know, who is very warm, friendly, honest, approachable, but also is very competent, skilled, and capable at what they do, the emotions that this generates in us is feelings of admiration and pride, and the behavior that usually results in is we are attracted to those people and we become loyal to them. Now, if we think about someone who has all the same skill and competence and effectiveness in what they do, but they're cold and unfriendly and not very trustworthy, this typically makes us feel envious and jealous, and what it results in is kind of grudging cooperation, but in a very distrustful way. We have to be careful because these people could pose a threat to us, but we're not sure we can trust them, so we have to kind of be very careful and grudgingly cooperate with them. Now, if we flip the side and look at someone who is very warm and friendly and honest, but is really not very reliable or skilled or capable of what they do, these are people we typically feel sympathy and pity towards, and that usually results in indifference and neglect. And then last, kind of the worst combination is cold and incompetent, kind of the double whammy. People that are not very friendly and not very skilled, we generally feel contempt and disgust for these people, and we reject and stay away from them. And so it turns out these basic 4 combinations are hugely predictive of not only social interactions, they predict stereotypes and bias, as well as the way that we interact with companies and brands. And so if we go to slide 2, I'll show you some quick illustrations or examples of different celebrities and how in our research we were able to show that this is exactly how we perceive them. So Tiger Woods, for instance, we don't see him as very honest or trustworthy or warm and friendly, but we do see him as very skilled and effective at what he does. And so he's kind of in that lower right-hand quadrant of envy and distrust. Vice President Joe Biden, as many perhaps vice presidents are, is perceived as well-intentioned but not very capable at getting things done. And so as a result, we feel sympathy and neglect towards him. Oprah Winfrey, tremendously successful, admired with a loyal following. And then someone like Fidel Castro, who has negative intentions towards the U.S., is not very skilled and capable as a leader. We have contempt and rejection towards him. So these are just examples of how we are instantaneously, without even thinking about it, making these kinds of judgments about the people we interact with every day.
Some interesting data there, Chris. Thanks for sharing it. And I think you give some examples, too, of companies, of things that happen. And I know there was one with Lexus, and you did another one with Domino's Pizza. And I think maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of those examples. I especially am familiar with the Domino's Pizza one and what they did. So could you tell us a little bit about how companies can take advantage of opportunities like that?
Sure. So given that we are driven to react in this way towards the warmth and competence of other people, it turns out that even if we don't have direct contact with the people at a Domino's or a Lexus or some other company or brand, that the way our brains are wired, we are still judging and make decisions on them as if they were people. We will try to infer from their advertising or their product or their experience that we have with them or the things that we hear about them, what the people are like on the other end, what it reflects about their intentions and abilities towards us. And so in the case of Domino's Pizza, one of the stories we like to tell is that even before the recession hit in 2008, they had started to struggle. Their same-store sales were down -5% 2 years in a row. And so when the recession hit, they were really very hard hit. Things really fell off a cliff for them when people cut back on necessary spending. And what they did, as a result, really becomes a great example of how to demonstrate warmth and competence towards your customers to build greater loyalty. Because rather than laying off employees and cutting costs and doing whatever they could to squeeze out more profit for the benefit of shareholders, they did, in fact, the exact opposite. They battened down the hatches, they invested in developing an entirely new pizza, and then to announce that to the world, rather than just say, we've got a new pizza, their CEO went on national television in 2009 during the NFL playoffs and basically apologized for the quality of their pizza, the poor service that they had given people, and even showed some of the negative things that focus groups had said about their product being tasteless and devoid of all flavor and so forth. And they basically said, we apologize, we've learned from our mistake, we're going to try again, and we've created a new pizza. We hope you'll forgive us and give us another chance. And as a result, that was a very kind of humanizing, warm and well-intentioned demonstration towards customers, and we did forgive them, and the people tried their pizza in droves, and it drove them in early 2010 to some of the highest same-store sales growth ever seen in the fast food industry. And so it's a great example of how when we do humanize our brand, recognize that we're being judged on warmth and competence, and find ways to demonstrate that to customers, that they will respond very strongly, in many cases even more strongly than if we had not made a mistake in the first place.
I thought the Domino's is a great example because everyone says, we're so afraid of being on social media and people saying negative things about us. I mean, to go on and say negative things about yourself is a very different strategy. To put up a billboard in Times Square and put up live tweets, and even the negative ones, I think is a really interesting. Give us some examples of missed opportunities, of cases where something went wrong and companies just didn't come out with that human reaction.
Sure. I think there's one in the news that you probably have heard about recently. A company called OfficeMax sent a direct mail piece to a family whose daughter had been killed in a car accident last year. And on the letter it said to Joe, I forget his last name, daughter died in a car accident. And they received this, and it was obviously a very unpleasant reminder that their daughter had passed away. They wanted to understand why that was on the letter, how it got there, and all of this kind of stuff. And OfficeMax has frankly been very slow to respond. They basically said, we're not sure how it happened. We bought the list from a supplier. They've been really silent for the most part. The news has spread very widely. There isn't any spokesperson from OfficeMax that's kind of gotten out in front of that. And even if they don't know who did it or how it happened, really the best thing to do is say, we are sorry, we take responsibility for it, we're going to make it right, and we will get to the bottom of it and all that. And they've been more silent than not, and as a result, now this story is on the front page of wallstreetjournal.com this afternoon, and it just won't go away. And so it's really a missed opportunity that they had to kind of, with that spotlight shining on them, to get out in front, do things that demonstrate they have the customer's best interests in mind, and demonstrate, you know, that they really can be trusted. And as a result, it really is a missed opportunity.
So that's a great takeaway from this show, is that when things happen, you got to get out in front. You got to just, you know, really focus on servicing the customer and what can you do to make things right. So now, tell us a little bit about the research you did. I know you have another chart that kind of shows a bunch of companies in different places. Talk about the study and what you look for and kind of how you came up with that data.
Sure. So, you know, the way this journey started is I had worked earlier in my career at the National Basketball Association and the National Hockey League, marketing professional athletes as brands, and then later also for Coca-Cola, marketing products and services later as brands as well. And so based on that experience, I've always personally had the belief that probably people were the first brands and faces were the first logos, and that all the brand and trade and commerce that we'd engaged in was probably an adaptation of that. But I'd never really seen any proof or evidence to show that that was the case. And so when I stumbled across Dr. Fisk's warmth and competence model, I said, gosh, that makes perfect sense. I wonder if this could be used to show that we do make decisions about companies and brands in the same way. And so I approached Dr. Fiske out of the blue. She was nice enough to take my call. I pitched her on the idea of adapting her model and studying companies and brands with it. And so over the last 3 years, we've conducted research on over 45 companies and brands with over 5,000 consumers, and found that, in fact, it does drive our behavior. If we'll pull up slide number 3 now, I'll show you, here's what we find when we take a look at those 45 companies and brands on that warmth and competence 4-quadrant chart. You'll see that basically we see the same pattern emerge that we saw with humans. So up in the upper right-hand quadrant, you see lots of well-known charities, lots of household names, lots of the best and most respected companies like Campbell Soup and Hershey and Johnson & Johnson and Coca-Cola and Amazon and so forth. They are all very strongly admired and very loyal. In the lower left-hand quadrant, you see lots of large financial services companies, energy companies, tobacco companies, all the companies that we are frustrated and often very distrustful of. In the lower right-hand quadrant, you see luxury brands, which is not different, very different from how we see people. A lot of wealthy people are seen as very competent, but not very warm. And then, interestingly, in the upper left-hand quadrant, we saw these government-subsidized entities who are perceived to be well-intentioned, but not particularly competent. They probably wouldn't continue to exist or be in business if they did not have that federal subsidy. And so we basically saw the same pattern of perceptions, emotions, and behavior towards companies that we did towards humans. And when we roll all this data up and analyze it from a behavior standpoint, we found that over 50% of all purchase intent and brand loyalty to these companies could be explained by 4 basic warmth and competence perceptions. Warm, friendly, competent, and capable. These things that we would normally just say about a person. And for us, it was evidence that, in fact, people were the first brands, faces were the first logos, and in fact, every human is a brand, and every brand is human. We are perceiving them and judging them in our brains exactly the same way, and so that has big implications for how we do business and how we market and build loyalty with customers.
Interesting, Chris. Very interesting how you can take these companies and put them in quadrants like that, and it really makes a lot of sense when you look at it.
Yeah, I think.
Now, for people watching this, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that actually a lot of the work that we do in marketing from a brand positioning standpoint and wanting to position our brands in a certain way with features and benefits, all the work that we've done suggests that that whole approach is really an outgrowth of how we are wired to perceive people from a warmth and competence standpoint. It's almost like we are doing positioning with people, and that we took that and extended it when we started to do brand positioning.
Very good. Now, for people watching this show, let's say someone who's got a brand, what are the kind of things the takeaways? What can they go do tomorrow in their business to start to improve where they're positioned out there?
Yep. We can boil it down to 3 imperatives. If you're really interested in building stronger loyalty and stronger customer support, we can boil it down to 3 imperatives. And the first of these is really that you've got to become more self-aware of how your company or your brand is being perceived from a warmth and competence standpoint. One of the big things that we found is that many of the largest, most successful companies do not realize that the business practices we are engaged in today are fundamentally at odds with what it takes for people to become trusting and loyal to them. It used to be that, there wasn't clear and wide and quick information about what companies and brands are doing. But the fact is, there are no secrets anymore. A mistake we make tomorrow will be, known around the world by the end of the day. And the world didn't used to be that way. And a lot of our policies and practices are against and conflicting with what the warmth and competence expectations customers have. So the first thing would be become more self-aware about how your company or brand is perceived. And we've got a free tool actually available. You can kind of try this out at loyaltytest.com, where you can kind of compare your perceptions and views of different brands versus our research, or even invite your customers or friends to provide their views as well. So a free tool to help you do that. Number 2, once you've got that feedback, you're really going to need to take a hard look at your policies, practices, and processes, how you're communicating with customers and how you're dealing and providing service and support to them. And make sure that you are embracing and making changes to better align with the warmth and competence expectations that customers have. And then the third imperative would really be to look at rebalancing your priorities. In many cases, the reason that we find that customer loyalty is actually lower now than ever before, despite that we've got more information and more ways to communicate to customers, is that we have been so focused on maximizing shareholder value and profits in the short term that customers and employees, frankly, now believe that we are doing so at their expense. And it has caused them to be very distrustful of us and really a lot less loyal to us as a result. And so if we rebalance those priorities and make sure that we're keeping the best interest of customers in balance with those of our employees and our shareholders, we're going to have a much better success having sustained performance and growth, rather than trying to squeeze everything out that we can and having a lot less loyalty with customers and having a much greater cost of business as a result.
Great advice. So become more self-aware and really think of how you interact. And don't focus just on short-term shareholder value. Great takeaways. So Chris, I'd love to talk to you longer, but we're running out of time. So where can our viewers learn more about you, your book, your company? Where should they go when they want to dive more into this model and the research you've done and how to improve their brand performance?
Sure, you can find out everything about the book. The free test that we talked about is all available at thehumanbrand.com, where you can download a first chapter of the book for free, listen to it online. We've got lots of instructional videos, as well as the loyalty test you can find links to there. And then if you're in a position where you think you may need help with some of this on a more professional or commercial level, our website at Fidelum, FIDELUM.com, also has lots of great resources, white papers, case studies, and things of that nature.
I want to thank Chris Malone, co-author of The Human Brand, for being a great guest on the show. Some really good insights, and I want to just reflect a little on that Domino's example. I mean, when he was saying in there, as they looked at the data, they did a Google search on like new and improved, and they found so many hits, and they took the opposite approach. They said, we sucked. Our pizzas were terrible. And that was just disarming, and people responded to that. So don't always just beat your chest. You gotta just let it out. So I want to thank Chris for being on the show. Check out The Human Brand. You can buy it on Amazon. Check out Fidelum Partners. Before we go, we want to thank our sponsors because they make the show possible. Avatage is a great content marketing company up in Boston area. Digital Ethos Education, marketing education, digitalethos.org. Communication Strategy Group is the brand telling company, GoCSG.com. And Watcha2 provides this wonderful platform we use for our TV on the Internet show. Marketing Made Simple TV premieres every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It encores on Sunday at noon, and it syndicates 2 weeks after premiere. So, till next time, we'll see you again on Marketing Made Simple TV.